How you doing, Fatmata?
Hey Jojo,
What's up, girl? How you doing? How's
how
everything?
goes it? How goes it? How's the week or 2 weeks been since we've been on?
It's been
Um,
okay. Fairly decent.
yeah.
I gotta say, not too much to complain about personally anyway. Politically, that's a whole different issue, which is why we're here today. Yay.
That is so true.
As
But
usual, folks, my eyes are downcast right now only because I'm trying to find us in our room, in our group. So forgive me for not looking straight at you. My apologies. But go ahead, Fatmata. I cut you off. My bad.
okay, no, it's okay. It's okay. It's okay. So, good evening, everyone. We are so happy to be here with you guys tonight. Um, it's been an interesting few weeks, right?
It
since,
has.
since we've had this new administration and things are going along. But before we get into all that, I'm Fatma Taberi, one of the admins.
And
Jojo.
I'm Joanne Foster today, also known as JoJo Barron, the other admin.
Okay. So tonight we have some nice topics to talk about today that I think are very pertinent to where we are right now.
Mhm.
But before we get there, we like to start every discussion with a quiet moment for those we have lost during this horrendous pandemic, and pray for those who are, still suffering and are not yet well and have not yet come on the other side of this of the illness. So if you could just give us a very short moment in memory of them. And as we are doing this, if you want us to recognize any of your loved ones, let us know. We're more than willing to do that. Just a couple of just a few moments of silence. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Um, so we have had a lot going on,
To
and
say the least.
to say the least. And you know, if we had all the time in memoriam, we can talk about so many things, but we don't. So we have a couple of topics for you guys tonight, and I hope you will join us in the discussion live so we can have conversations about what's happening. And there's a lot to fix. Um, we're in a time where there's so much going on that you are not sure what to pay attention to because everything just seems to be coming at you from all directions, right, Joe?
hmm it's overwhelming at times. It's like, what should you be paying attention to? And unfortunately or fortunately, the answer is all of it. We have to walk and chew gum and pay attention to all of it.
Right. So tonight, our first issue, Joanne is going to take take that and bring it out for you guys. It's obviously a very important issue. So I'll let Joanne take the helm on that topic.
So the first thing that Fatmata and I wanted to talk about tonight was healthcare disparities, but particularly with regard to COVID. Clearly, we're in the middle of the pandemic, and there are a lot of aspects of healthcare disparities that we could talk about because so many things directly affect us. But right now, we are looking at a situation where vaccines are now in the midst of being distributed. Each state is deciding how and who is going to take priority. So the governors or the healthcare institutions, running each state are making those decisions for each state. But what's happening across the board is that Black, Brown, people who are in lower income communities are not receiving vaccines at the same rate as the infection and even the death rate in those communities. So, we really need to take a look at what is going on. Why is this happening? And why is it, these continually these issues come up in our communities? One example is I live in South Florida. DeSantis, you may or may not know, is probably the worst governor I've seen in my lifetime in this state. He's pretty terrible. His handling of this pandemic, uh, basically, he's been a surrogate for Trump from the beginning. He's opened up all facets of institutions in this state without having clear guidelines. He's taken away the ability of counties to penalize people when the mask ordinances are not followed, and it's just a crying mess. And particularly in Dade County, we have a situation where the Black community happens to be 17% of the population, and as of right now, only 7% of the population has seen vaccines, but they've seen 60% of the deaths from COVID in Dade County. And that's really, 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 that's an obscene number. It's ridiculous that we have numbers of that kind of disparity, but the vaccination rates are, I mean, it's poor. It's piss poor for the distribution of the vaccines to look like those numbers. And certain excuses people come up with, technology issues. A lot of the means of communicating with people about where vaccines are being distributed, getting an appointment, things of that nature. Most of that is happening via websites. A lot of the information being distributed about how to get these vaccines, unfortunately, is being distributed via websites. And unfortunately, there's a technology disparity that we have to acknowledge. The elderly population, they're being prioritized right now in Florida, and I have no issue with that. I take no issue with that. But we have an elderly Black population in Florida that may not be as technologically forward. A lot of folks who are elderly also have issues with, maybe trusting the system. They come from a generation where they saw various things happen and they've heard various things happen, and don't trust the medical system. So we have a combination of distrust of the medical of the medical field and the medical community and vaccinations, coupled with true technology issues that's preventing information for getting to these communities. So what we have is, oftentimes we have folks coming from wealthier communities going into low income communities, taking appointments, and these are all documented. This is not information I'm making up, and I'll share articles with you guys after. But we have oftentimes scenarios where people from wealthier communities with more access to information, access to technology, even the ability to get transportation from one location farther away to another location farther away. Another obstacle for Black folks in lower income communities is a transportation issue, and they're taking these appointments. And we recognize that everyone needs these vaccinations, but when you have a community that's so hard hit by this pandemic, we need to find a way to prioritize not just the age, but also the communities that are hard hit by this disease, by this pandemic. And I don't think our government has done that. I don't think our government is taking the helm in doing that. And so I wonder if we as a community need to take the helm in making sure that our folks are prioritized, that our communities are prioritized. As usual, we need to be the primary, need to take primary responsibility for these things, because we're all we have. The larger community, they folks love to say we're in this together, but unfortunately, we don't see that when it comes to uh, looking at how people in Black communities are treated versus other communities. So what we're looking at today really is discussing how are we going to, as a community, uh, deal with this issue, because once the priorities expand past healthcare workers and past the elderly and into the general population, we're going to have a real explosion of a problem, because we're going to have far more people, in these various age groups and priorities, whether it be hotel workers, restaurant workers, and as we go further and further down in the priority, people just of the general population, but that look like us. What are we going to do to make sure that we balance the distrust in our communities and make sure folks in those communities get the vaccines, make sure technology is not an obstacle, make sure transportation is not an obstacle. Once we get to a younger ages, we're going to have then an issue of people having jobs and not being able to take off for 2-3 hours or longer to stand in line to get this vaccination. I just went with my mom the other day for her to get her vaccination, and we legitimately sat in our cars for, I think, 3 or 4 hours. Now it felt shorter, but I feel like we sat in the car for at least 3 hours, between the back of the line all the way to the sitting that you have to do for the 30 minutes to make sure there are no side effects, all the way to leaving. And then we actually drove quite a distance because, unfortunately, nothing was happening in our county, which is a whole nother issue. Um, where I live in a county that didn't go DeSantis's way, so I have a conspiracy theory on that I won't necessarily share because I don't want to get sued. But all kinds of obstacles. What are we going to do as the priorities open up and more people are eligible for these vaccines? What are we going to do as a community to make sure we are appropriately vaccinated? Fatmata, what are your thoughts on this? And Fatmata, we can't hear you. You're on mute right now.
Because I didn't want any background noise to interrupt, because I think this is such an important topic,
Mm-hmm.
um, and I'm sure there are a lot of people who can relate to some of the stuff you just talked about. And I think part of the thing is understanding where the issue comes from and why maybe we are not being vaccinated at the same rate. Of course, there's the structural issue of transportation. Like you said, I just actually heard um, a discussion about that on the news. People having an appointment like maybe 7 a.m., 8 a.m., but they have to take like several buses to get to that appointment.
Mm-hmm.
Those
And
kind
the
of,
buses don't start that early, sometimes early enough for them to make all the
and
transfers.
depending on where you are, by the time the transfer comes, and depending on
Hmm.
whatever, anything can happen, and you
Yeah,
miss your appointment or whatever, and you have to go to work, and and you have to rely on this stuff. And depending on the state you're in, the public transport is not exactly the best. I grew up in West
hmm,
Palm. Growing up, public
yeah,
transport was not the best
terrible.
back then, growing up in West Palm Beach. So I don't know what it's like now, obviously, but um, and I also think it's addressing the the deep issue of trust, right?
Hmm.
Because we know that the Black community does not have any sort of trust in our health system, be-
Absolutely.
right? Besides just the history of the tests they've done on people from Tuskegee to Henrietta Lacks and those people, right? Um, they're, besides that, there are deeper issues, right?
In
Joanne?
2021, 2020, we have issues with the healthcare system failing us on a very regular basis. So we don't even have to go back to the Tuskegee projects and going back to how gynecology was even created in this country. We don't have to even go to ancient times. We can go to as recently as probably last week in this country somebody was It's ridiculous. And somebody that looks like us was failed because they look like us, and all the medical biases. And we're dealing with that.
Hmm.
We're dealing with all those issues.
Yeah. And I think that adds a lot to it. And we don't talk about that as much when it comes to
Hmm.
the vaccinations, right? We
Yep.
sort of talk about building trust and things like that. But how do you build trust without first addressing the thing that caused the trust to not be there?
Yeah.
So we don't, and I know people will be like, well, we don't really have the time right now
Yeah.
to like have this entire reconciliation of what is happening with people every day. But I think acknowledging it,
Hmm.
and you know because most of the time when you hear people, when you hear them talk about it, they're really talking about the history
Hmm.
of what happened as opposed to the here and now,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
I'm a victim of medical bias myself. I was a practicing attorney. I had a stroke at my desk, and the EMT came to my office. They came to where I was working, picked me up from the office, and I was treated right from the start very, very poorly. The EMT was rude. I remember a lot. Even though I had passed out, I remember a lot of how they spoke to me, of how I was dealt with. They questioned me. Are you pregnant? Are you taking drugs? I mean, there were a lot of questions that were asked of me all the way through this process. And I remember clearly when I was in the ER, I was left on a gurney in a hallway, and the nurse who was attending me was very, very rude. I was vomiting, and she just assumed that, based upon her questions, that I was a drug addict looking for drugs. I had vomited what she did give me. Oh, and I remember her clearly saying, "Well, we can't give you any more because you just vomited what you took." And I'm thinking to myself, it probably didn't get into my system if I vomited, but I'm not a doctor or a nurse. I don't know these things. I left it alone. But it really, really hit me. Um, Two times it hit me. The first was when they tried to send me home that night that I had spent the entire day in the ER. And I hear that same nurse in my ear saying, "Oh, I can't believe we have to admit you for vertigo," annoyed and exasperated. And the next morning, when my doctor comes into the room and apologizes and says, "I'm sorry, Miss Foster, but you had a stroke and we caught it too late. And you're probably not going to get too much improved too much further than this." So I said to myself, "So you're telling me," and I actually asked the EMT the day before, "Am I having a stroke?" And I said this as my face was crooked. I could barely speak. I was drooling. The room was spinning. I actually asked this question, and the EMT's response was, "Oh, I highly doubt it." When in actuality, that's exactly what happened to me. I all of that all of that was missed because they were under the assumption that I was either faking somehow, I was seeking drugs, um, and it didn't matter that they had actually uh, transported me from the law firm that I was working at the time. Um, so, healthcare disparities, medical bias, all of that is real. None of that is our imagination. And all of that really needs to be addressed and dealt with simultaneously, to us as a community, talking to our elderly and talking to everyone within the community and getting us to trust that these vaccines are going to help us. Because I know myself, I worried about my arm falling off. But, I think what I'm seeing in terms of the deaths. I know people might personally who have passed away from this. Um, and then new strains. We've got the United Kingdom, the England or United Kingdom, the UK strain they're calling it. There's a Brazilian strain. There's a South African strain, and all of these strains are more, I guess, they're worse the symptoms are more severe than what we've been seeing thus far, and they're questioning of even the vaccines that we're taking now, if it's sufficient, but it's better than nothing, is what we're hearing over and over. And that's what we need to try to get across to folks. At the same time, we need to work to deal with the history, not just past history, deal with history that's probably yesterday, this afternoon,
Mhm.
the medical bias that we know that exists in the medical industry, that creates, partially is the creator of these disparities that we see. But what do we do? What do we do? I mean, that's always the question that I have. We can talk about this all day long, but what is the solution? What truly is the solution to all of this?
Um, I think part of the stuff will probably be more going to the communities that need this more. And I know that there have been attempts made, and to my understanding, even though it's in the community, people from outside of the community make appointments to come into the community and get the vaccinations, who are not part of that community.
Mm-hmm.
But I think going to them, making sure that there's complete and total transparency, and making sure that the people who are working with them and administering it looks like them, because
That's a good first step.
right, at least
Mm-hmm.
at a minimum, I think that would be something that could help, because it's human nature to trust that what looks like you, who
Mm-hmm.
sounds like you, who you can relate to, especially if you don't have a good relationship to begin with the system. Um, and we all know it's a fact. We don't have it. We don't have it. And the numbers are abysmal right now. And there's just too much um, going on. And Black people, people of color, indigenous people, all of this, still the ones in front.
Yep.
They're still the ones in the front. They're still the health professionals. They're still the ones right there. And to my understanding, even they're not getting vaccinated as much as they
Mm-hmm.
should,
Yeah.
at least percentage wise, right?
Mm-hmm.
Even they're not getting vaccinated as much, and they need to be. They need to be, because they're the ones that are there helping, and saving people's lives and taking care of those who are sick.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so so I think to address some of this, that's what needs to happen. So I see you're sharing something, Joe.
Yeah. Little technical difficulty. But yeah, ultimately, even if healthcare workers, people who are actually high priority folks, are not getting the vaccine at the same rate, we have to ask a lot of questions. Why is that? Um, we have to address whatever issue is stopping them, because they're at the front lines. They're the ones helping and caring for people who are probably the most vulnerable and the most and they are as vulnerable as anyone else. Um, so why aren't they getting the vaccine? It may not be as much of an access issue as much as it is a trust issue. So that's one of the reasons why we have to deal with the trust issue when it comes to um, frontline workers and Black folks in general. And then when it comes to the structural issues, the structural inequality issues, access to these vaccines, we need to deal with technology issues. We need to deal with, because it's not enough to say, okay, let's just put them in churches, because that was the solution DeSantis thought was going to be the end all, be all, end all to this, disparity. Let's just put them in churches and we'll be fine. But no, the answer is not, let's just put them in churches, because where are these churches? Who attends these churches? And not all Black folks attend church. It's a false assumption that, I mean, they have the interfaith vaccination programs, and those are great. But what about heathens like me that, we don't do the church thing? What if I'm 75 years old and I don't do the church thing? Then what? You don't get me. You wouldn't get me. And I'm on the priority list, and we have to find a way to get to every single person who is eligible for it, and particularly those who are most vulnerable to not receiving it. And we now know, particularly because we've been going through these vaccination programs since at least December, January. We now know 1 to 2, 3 months in, however many months we're in December, January, February. So 2 months in now, we know what communities are being left off. So now that we have the data, it's not just presumptions. We have actual firm data of what it
Yep.
looks like and who is being left off. As usual, it's not like we needed data. We knew this was going to happen. But now
Yeah.
that we have it, what do we do? What are the solutions? So we got to be solution oriented.
Okay. Very
And
true.
these are some terrifying numbers you're putting up.
Wow. And
5.4 Black Americans in the US have been vaccinated
isn't that
versus
scary?
60.4% of white Americans. I mean, y'all don't see a problem with that. We're at least we're 12 to 13% of the population. So, I mean, at minimum, I'm not saying that all of us should be vaccinated. It shouldn't be 100% of all Black folks, but at least in comparison to the population of those in America, it should match. Give us
Yeah,
at least that.
at least.
At minimum, at minimum.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
it's okay to see our numbers go out of control when it comes to us dying and contracting the virus. But when it comes to making sure that we're cared for, when it comes to making sure that we're vaccinated for some reason, ensuring that we're cared for in that respect is not a priority at all. So since we're not, and we continue to not be a priority, since that is the case, we need to figure out what it is that we're going to do for ourselves, because really we are all we have. No
hmm.
one else gives a damn about us. So we
So
have
I,
to
I
figure this
think
out for ourselves.
this is where we be more vocal, right?
Hmm.
We reach out to our community because, of course, it's going to be hard to get people to go and get this done for some, even if it's available, right? So, I think having people who are trustworthy to to be able to speak to the issue um, with knowledge, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
And maybe that would help. So, of course, this isn't a one evening conversation. It's
Hmm.
going to be going on and on and on because it's a continued problem. But we're here to try to elevate and make sure that um, we were able to talk about it. So we might be able to do that, and maybe in the future have someone who can join us that can break it down for us.
Maybe another Barry sibling.
No promises. Um, no promises. But maybe somebody who can talk about vaccination and the safety of it, and
Hmm.
whether it be something that people should consider um, taking for not just for themselves, of course, but for their family members and for the community at large and for all of us, so we can have a life again, right?
Hmm. Yeah, I'm
Um,
tired of being, even though I'm an introvert and it's been crazy. I work from home, I live home. I'd like to be able to go to Starbucks and work again, or to the library and work from there again.
I
That would be
know,
ideal. Can we hurry up? Speed this
I
up.
know, I know, I know. We wish we could, right?
Yeah.
We wish we could, but here we are. Not happening, unfortunately. So, on that note, um, next topic is, very different, right? So,
Switching gears.
switching gears, this topic is really something I wanted us to have a conversation about because I've seen, I've put stuff out on Facebook, and some of the responses I've been getting, and it's not from the right. So let's dispel that.
Mm-hmm.
Not like right wing people who whatever, whatever. But there seems to almost be a move towards who Americans, who what we do as a country forget very quickly. And and I think that's a dangerous place to be. So I wanted to have this conversation to remind us where we are, who we are, who and what we're up against, where all this came from, and how we got here. And to do that, I'm going to use somebody else
Mm-hmm.
to speak, so that people can see what it is I'm talking about. Now, this right here, you I saw this this past Sunday, and it struck me that all this is so true, so very true, because we are sort of we keep saying all this stuff about, oh, why can't the GOP do this? I cannot believe they did that. I cannot believe they're doing this. Like, and you hear this narrative over and over and over, and some of us are like, stop saying that. This is who they are. This is who they've been. What is it? Why are we sounding like if we're expecting them to do something other than what they do? So
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna play this video of Fareed's take this past Sunday, when he did one of his Sunday shows. I love his takes sometimes more so than the rest of the show
Mm-hmm.
because I think he's just one of the smartest men out there. So here we go. Give me a minute. Let me rewind it.
Taylor Greene, who has suggested we're all
Okay.
wondering
Can you hear
how
it?
the
I
Republican
can hear it.
Party of Abraham Lincoln got to the point that it has an elected member of Congress, Marjorie Taylor Greene, who has suggested Nancy Pelosi could be executed for treason, cast doubt on the events of 9/11, and speculated that a Jewish cabal used lasers to start California's wildfires.
Lord.
The answer is in plain sight: the continual accommodation of extremism by the party's leaders. This week, the Republican Congressional Caucus declined to censure Greene in any way. House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy pretended not to even know what QAnon was. In the Senate, Mitch McConnell has finally drawn the line, describing Greene's views as loony. But it is too little, too late. The party has been encouraging loony views for years. Today, we rightly applaud Mitt Romney for his political courage, but it's worth recalling that when he was running for president in 2012, he craved Donald Trump's endorsement. When he got it, he gushed.
There are some things that you just can't imagine happening in your life.
Later that year, Romney tacitly endorsed Trump's most noxious lie, birtherism.
No one's ever asked to see my birth certificate. They know that this is the place that we were born and raised.
The real big lie at the heart of the modern Republican Party, though, is about public policy, not conspiracy theories. Since the 1930s, Republicans promised their voters the repeal of FDR's New Deal. When the next Republican president, Dwight Eisenhower, did nothing of the sort, the modern conservative movement emerged, furiously branding Ike a traitor. When LBJ enacted the Great Society, conservatives pledged that once elected, they would tear it all down, and never did. Ronald Reagan launched his political career by denouncing Medicare as a direct path to socialism. If passed, he famously warned,
"You and I are going to spend our sunset years telling our children and our children's children what it once was like in America when men were free."
Of course, as president for 8 years, Reagan left Medicare largely intact and actually ended up expanding the program. In the early 1990s, House leader Newt Gingrich doubled down on a rhetoric of radicalism and extremism. He promised revolution and described political opponents as the embodiment of evil, who win only because they lie and cheat. E.J. Dionne has described the toxic results of this strategy as the politics of disappointment and betrayal. Ted Cruz follows the same strategy today still. His 2016 platform included promises to repeal Obamacare, abolish the IRS, and balance the budget, plans that he knew could never get enacted. But they were just the right red meat for the base. He treats his supporters like cannon fodder, whipping them into hysteria and sending them into battle. The Republican Party endlessly crowed about repealing and replacing Obamacare, only to come to power without any viable plan, and then quickly accommodated itself to the reality it had vowed to overturn. This entire decades-long strategy has led millions of Republicans to feel cheated and lied to by their leaders, creating an atmosphere of paranoia and suspicion toward anyone who is not utterly extreme. It also feeds the notion that true conservatism fails because of some kind of treason, betrayal, or collusion. It is a short and direct line from the tactics of Newt Gingrich to the January 6th Capitol riot. If you're looking for an alternative path for a conservative leader, one who even knows how to appeal to populist and nationalist sentiment, look at British Prime Minister Boris Johnson. Johnson, who initially and badly bungled COVID-19, is now tackling the pandemic with much greater seriousness, and he has gradually emerged as the most consequential conservative politician since Margaret Thatcher. He has been slowly but surely reshaping his party to make it more compatible with modern-day Britain. His cabinet is remarkably diverse, with 2 of the 3 most powerful positions filled by Asian Britons. Describing his plans for big spending during the pandemic and after, Johnson admits,
"Sounds like a New Deal." And all I can say is, if that is so, then that is how it's meant to sound and how it's meant to be. Because that is what the times demand. A government that is powerful and determined and that puts its arms around people at a time of crisis.
He adds to these innovations more traditional Thatcherite ideas like efficient government, free trade, and a moral foreign policy.
We will build. Build back better, build back greener, build back faster.
If Republicans are searching for a conservatism that can work in the modern era, they should first stop lying to their own voters. Then they could look to examples like Britain's to bring their party into the world of facts and reality. Go to cnn.com/Fareed for a link to my Washington Post column this week.
Now, do we still think
We need to reduce plastic waste in the environment.
that,
That's why America's beverage companies,
Our bottles are.
do we still think that what is happening today is new?
I hope we don't still think that.
It's not new. It's not, and waiting for them to somehow make a U-turn
Mhm,
is not going to happen.
mhm.
The little bit of history about Newt Gingrich and the other side, the left wing people are enemies. They're it's vitriolic. You cannot do that over decades and then think this that's happening now can be fixed by those of us on the left saying, "Oh, we care about you."
Unity, kumbaya.
This it's decades and decades and
Mhm,
decades
mhm,
of misinformation, of lies, of
mhm.
building of hate. That cannot go away because we all of a sudden are now saying we understand that you've had a really hard life and you've had really difficult times. I just want us to be realistic and honest with where we are now, so that at the end of the day, when we're putting things in place to counter some of this hate and all these things that we're talking about, we can actually put a plan in place that actually fits the issue.
Mhm.
Because if we keep thinking that what's going to fix it is Biden being nicer to the GOP, those of us who call out GOP leaders, we should make them feel better if they speak up now, when for the past decades or
Mhm.
the past 4 years they did nothing to but make things worse.
Yeah. Even if it's just through their silence, they made it worse.
They made it worse. So you cannot now come after you have caused all these problems, and we are now at this stage. Now, all of a sudden, if you saying one thing or you vote one way, we are supposed to blast you all over the place and be all, oh my God, she's the best, like Liz Cheney. Liz Cheney voted for this woman to remain in her committees,
Yeah.
regardless of what her vote is as it relates to Trump. So can we not uplift these people? Because again, come 2022, 2024, these people are going to be running against Democrats. The people who, for now, I mean, the people that we know at least
Mm-hmm.
are not storming the Capitol, are not, blatantly trying to muzzle all of us and get rid of the others, but
Because that's what they're trying to do.
the people we have right now, they are. And just because after 4 years of quietness or of doing nothing, they now say Trump was wrong for causing this, but yet still the chances of them actually voting in the Senate to convict him is next to nil.
Yeah.
So how do we take those people and give them kudos and uplift them and make it seem as if they are brave soldiers, and they are you know what the brave soldiers are? The brave soldiers are people like Officer Goodman.
Mm-hmm.
He's a brave soldier. That's brave, right?
Did you see him telling Mitt Romney to turn your butt around and go in the other direction? They're coming for you.
I saw him. I was like, oh
What?
my goodness. Like all these videos that are coming out that somehow they were able to keep from leaking. So
We might have to go live again just to talk about these impeachment, girl, because this is a hot mess. But
so I mean, so he is a hero, right?
yes.
The Capitol Hill police officer who they pulled his mask through the door and punching him.
Yes. The one screaming for his life, crushed in the door. Yes.
He's a hero. The people who lost their lives, the
Limbs.
the officer who he lost his life, he's a
Mm-hmm.
hero. He's a hero. And he did all that despite the fact that, according to reports, he was actually a Trump supporter.
Mm-hmm.
But that wasn't the point.
Yeah.
He was an officer.
Mm-hmm.
And he was doing what his job entailed for him to do.
Mm-hmm.
And he did it. And he lost his life doing it. Now, those are heroes. The GOP elected officials that are speaking now, who have not said a peep, they're not heroes. Let's stop calling them heroes. Let's stop calling them brave. Let's stop putting them on a pedestal. Please.
If you voted for Amy Coney
Barrett,
ACB, I can't remember the woman's name, to be Supreme Court Justice, you get zero kudos from me because today, or yesterday, you voted that these proceedings should go forward, Mitt Romney. No, you don't get kudos from me at all. You're not a hero for a vote when your record is deplorable. To quote who should have been president in the last 4 years, but whatever.
But and for me, that's really it, right? We're not even, and I'm speaking to us, us left, whatever you want to call yourself. We are not even spending time to uplift our own. Like, yes. I see people spending so much time blasting out and uplifting Republicans who, for the first time, are saying something. you're not putting out and uplifting those who are in the trenches. I
Mhm.
do see now, at least during this impeachment trial, they're uplifting our Maryland Congressman, Jamie Raskin.
Mhm.
Woo-hoo. You know, at least that,
And
right?
the
And I say,
delegate from the Virgin Islands, whose name I'm forgetting right now, please forgive me. She put together, or her
yes,
presentation today was just, my gosh.
amazing, right?
I'm gonna get her name right now because she deserves all the kudos. Stacy Plaskett. My
Mhm.
goodness,
Yes,
delegate,
Virgin Islands,
you put on a presentation today. Mm-mm-mm. It was just incredible, absolutely incredible.
right. So you see, so these are the people,
Joe
Nagu,
Naguse. I
yep.
know I'm saying his name wrong.
No, you're not. No,
Am I?
Nagu.
Okay.
Mhm. He These are the people who are in the trenches. These are the
Hmm.
people who are fighting the good fight. But every time I turn around, we're talking about this. And then if you put out something, calling someone out, the responses are, well, if they're doing something, let's at least give them, no, let's at least give them nothing. What? Give them what?
Give them dust. How about
Nothing.
silence?
Silence, the same silence some of them have gave us for the last 4 years.
Yeah.
Give them that same silence.
Hmm.
Because the reality is this: no matter what anyone on the left, no matter what you do, look at how much Obama tried to work with them those 8 years. Did any of them come out of their mouth and say, oh, Obama at least tries to work with people? Oh, not one time.
Nope. Still, they
Instead, what
don't.
do? They double down,
Hmm.
continue to demonize him,
Hmm.
and make him into something else.
They continue to question his citizenship. They question even his right to have been president for 8 years. They demonize his wife. Ugh. Anyway.
And that's my thing. So, to my friends on the left, we still have a lot of work to do.
Hmm.
2022, at every live, I'm going to keep saying it. Reverend Raphael Warnock is
Hmm.
going to be on the ballot. His seat is not safe.
Hmm.
All these states right now, they are putting policies in place. These Republican legislators are putting things in place to suppress our votes.
22 states so far, state legislatures have put together legislation, have put forward legislation to suppress the vote, to restrict mail-in voting. I mean, it's ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous, but it's starting, and it's starting already. And we
It's
have
already
to
starting.
we have to organize now, not wait until a week before election day to get everybody organized, 2 weeks before on that Sunday when church is organized. No, by then it's too late.
Way too late. So we need to come out of this and continue to realize that there's still a lot of work left to be done, and we
Hmm.
need to do it. That's it. Because
Yeah.
think about it. If we you remember the post you shared with me, Joanne, the lady that tweeted out about her husband coming into the US for the first time, and the person who interviewed him was an Arab person, and he was like,
Yes.
"Assalamu alaikum, welcome to the US of A."
Oh,
I mean,
elections have
they
consequences,
have consequences.
good and bad, and this is a good one.
We can try as much as we want to do the false equivalencies,
Hmm.
but please let's stop that, because we
Ugh.
know for a fact the last 4 years and just this past few weeks has been very different.
Hmm.
Has been different. It's not perfect, it's not beautiful. There are things we still want to get done. But for the past couple of weeks, let's
Even
be
the handling of the whole countrywide vaccination strategy is vastly different.
vastly.
January 20th and forward versus January 19th and before.
So
Vastly different.
so let's keep that in mind as we move forward. Let's, I'm not saying carry hate in your heart, because somehow we mix up um
Okay, hate in my heart.
self-care and being a little bit more selfish with, oh, we can't just keep hating them. It's not about hating them. It's about not focusing our attention on trying to fix them, or trying to hug them and
Embrace
bring,
them as,
yeah,
bipartisanship. I don't care about bipartisanship. That's not a priority. I have no problems with ramming through legislation the way they ram through ACB through the Senate. We need to do that for good legislation. Use it as an example to do good things for this country, such as COVID legislation, for an
yeah,
example. And we're ramming it through, thankfully. Not as
thankfully.
quickly as ACB, but it's getting through.
And it's amazing that the same 1.9 trillion is what Trump passed
Hmm.
with his GOP Congress for the wealthy. And
Yeah,
yet somehow this is too much
yeah.
for regular people.
It makes no sense and I read an article recently that said that the trickle down economy that Reagan, attempted to enact through his policies back in the 80s, 8, 9, 10, 11. So we're talking over 30 years ago now, didn't work, by the way. So now here we are 30 years later, and trickle down economy was not successful, but yet they're still doing tax strategies and passing tax laws that reflect this trickle down economy idea that if you give rich people money, they'll create jobs and it'll trickle down to everybody else. I need y'all to stop peeing on our heads and calling it rain, because it's not what's happening. But again, you know me going off on a tangent. My bad. Sorry, Famana.
No, it all sort of links in. And this time it's not that much going on a tangent, because the reality is that we know that every time major, when the monies are given, even during this pandemic, the money that was supposed to be used for them to keep the employees,
Oh, the PPP loan. I
yeah,
think the distribution of that was a disaster.
they didn't use it for that. The
No.
they instead they used it to hold on to, or to give their whatever people more
Yeah.
money. So we know that happens. So this, we know factually trickle down does not work, and it
No.
hasn't worked. But again, the folks who have control of that are the ones with the money. So this
Hmm.
is, you know, hopefully we will see some changes with Bernie Sanders being at the helm of the committee,
Hmm.
um,
Hmm.
and we'll see what happens. So there's a lot happening, there's a lot going on, and we
And
have
we
a lot.
need a strategy as a collective that we're going to have people in power for longer than we'll have control for longer than just 2 years, because we had that with Obama for his first 2 years of his presidency, and because we didn't hold on to the narrative, because we didn't control the narrative of the Affordable Care Act, that power was squandered and we lost it. We have to make sure we control the narrative of COVID-19 relief, of vaccination, and whatever else is coming down the pipeline, and we hold on to power for the duration, at least, of Biden's presidency, and then enact good things, do
You
good
know,
things with that power.
you know how we can do that?
Tell me.
By focusing on our strategy.
Hmm.
Because the problem we have is we focus, and we're doing that now, even in this one of the worst situations, on hugging and bringing people in,
Yeah, yeah.
and trying to fix them, and trying to say, well, you can't really do much without them. They did it for 4 years without you. For 4 years
And
they
even
did it
before
without you.
that, they
How
led
many
from the back.
how many times did Democrats come on TV and said they weren't even part of the meetings?
Hmm.
They
Yep.
were left out.
Yep.
They put in 50, 50, if I remember correctly, federal judges, all white male,
Yep.
young enough to be around for the next 50 years. And
Mm.
then another 200 and whatever in the lower federal courts,
Hmm.
right? So those 50, I think, were the lifetime appointments. Then you have the others. 300 and something judges.
Yeah.
Some who have never even done litigation.
Never.
So how are you going to be a judge? You've never actually done the thing that you're going to be.
It's mind-boggling. You know, that's actually a lie for a different day. The audacity, the caucasity of some of these folks. You know, they think just because genetics, you know, their race, they are automatically qualified to do whatever, even though they've never touched one single case in their lives or whatever the case may be. But
Yeah,
that's a
so
whole different issue.
that's just I only brought that up so people can keep in mind as you see news coming out of someone like Kissinger, whatever his name is, Kissinger, whatever, talking all the stuff against Trump. Leave him to his own devices.
Oh yeah.
Listen and nod and say good and leave it alone.
Yeah.
Put up a picture of Cheney giving her whatever. Don't put up a picture of Mitt Romney giving him whatever. Don't put up a picture of any of them giving them whatever. Unless you're on the same page with them, then I can't help you.
Yeah.
However, for those of us who are not on that same page,
Please don't give them kudos.
do not, because in a couple of years, you are going to be, if you're involved politically, and many of the ones I'm talking to that I know you are involved politically, in a few years, you are going to be running campaigns against these people. Just saying.
Yeah.
So
and then there's going to be a record of you having said, woohoo, these people are great. Don't do it. Don't do it. If you feel that way, say it at home to your family, you know, but don't post it on social media.
Wife, so whoever to your best friend, be like, girl,
yeah,
this, and then leave it where it's at.
Yeah, but don't publicize it. They don't need the publicity. We don't need to help them. Cheney, Romney, Murkowski, Collins, and whoever the other six are. I know Mitt Romney, Susan Collins, and Murkowski, and then there were three others who I can't remember who voted yesterday that this was constitutional and we should move forward. They didn't need any kudos.
But
they
get
just.
But get this on our way out. Murkowski, right? Yeah, she voted for whatever, and it's horrendous and it's horrible and da 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 da. But she made the comment. She did what I would now call a Susan Collins. But it's almost like if why convict him? Because with those videos, who's going to elect him anyway? I'm like, do we not remember Susan Collins said he learned his lesson?
He learned his lesson. The answer is we need to really, really work hard to find a replacement, not particularly for Susan Collins and Murkowski and Mitt Romney's, but we need to find out who is vulnerable in these Senate seats, look at all 50 states, figure out who's vulnerable and have a 50.
We have a couple that are not running for re-election. A couple of Republicans who are not running for re-election.
If they're not running for re-elections, let's fight hard for those seats, because I'm not sure how we get past people who have been there and in states where there's a low Black population or not much of a Black population, and they keep re-electing these crazy folks over and over and over again. We need a 50-state strategy.
Don't say crazy.
Okay, yeah, it's ableist, my bad, I'm sorry. But these folks who, you know, how about hypocrites? They're absolutely hypocrites. They talk out their neck. They'll do one thing and they'll say the next, or they'll say one thing and do the opposite and expect kudos from us because they have one stupid vote. And in the final vote, let's see how that pans out. Let's see how the final vote comes. But as a strategy for the next election, the midterm elections, we need to look at who's not running again, who is vulnerable, what is the minority population or the population of people of color in those states, and how do we galvanize those people? How do we galvanize around a candidate that is strong or strengthen that candidate? Because nobody thought in a million years that Reverend Warnock would be a senator right now. So we have to galvanize around that person and strengthen them and put them in that seat, because we can't rely on Manchin, who is West Virginia. There is another woman whose name I can never remember. Two Democrats. We have to.
Cinema.
There we go. So those are two Democratic seats that we can't really rely upon as being solid Democrat. And then we have just a slew of Republicans that clearly are not voting for the interests of this country. We as a nation, we need to figure out how to build up the Democratic Party and build up more Democratic seats so that we don't have to worry about what is this issue with the GOP. If we get those people, if we diminish their power, then they become a non-issue. I mean, so we'll see.
Thank you everyone for joining us.
Oh, this has been a long one today, and we were trying to make this 30 minutes. Oh goodness.
There's no way.
Ain't no way. We talk too much.
I know.
Every week we say, oh, well, girl, we're just gonna do 30 minutes. Let's keep this short.
No, let's
right.
Give it up. So but thank you for joining us. Please feel free to share the post, invite other people to the group, turn on your notification for the lives, and and follow us on IG, Twitter, and we're also on YouTube. So please join us again here next time. So we do every other Wednesday.
Yes.
But we might come in a little early because there's so much happening and so much going on.
I really want to talk about the impeachment, please.
So
let's come back next week, but we'll see. We'll see.
Here next week, Wednesday, to talk about the impeachment.
Maybe.
And just discuss the impeachment.
Because we'll know the outcome by then, right? We'll know. We should know.
Yeah, we should know by then what happened.
And so we can either complain about it or rave about it, one or the other. We'll see.
We shall see.
Yeah.
But thank you very much for joining us. And again, people, please, let's try to be more interactive.
Yes.
So if people are having a hard time with the interactive at this time of day, let us know what days and times of day are good for people to be more engaged.
Yes.
And we'll try to see what we can do, because we want to be more engaging. We want to bring everyone in. Okay. So invite more people to the group. The bigger we are, the better, the more diverse we'll be as a Black diaspora. Thank you so very much for joining us tonight. And we will see you probably, I think we might see next week.
I think so.
Right?
I'd like to.
Yeah, I know you would. All right, everybody. Good night. And
good night.
Be safe. Be very, very safe. And
good night, everyone.
Be good. All right. Bye-bye.